the next generation of kids, they start worshipping Rama, Krishna. Like, are we really necessarily need to worship, or we just need to understand the spirituality that they have taught so far?
So, do you think by putting a Tendulkar's statue and just worshipping daily will give you that learn? Or by understanding how Tendulkar hits a cover drive or the square drive and practice it continuously will help you.
Vedas or Upanishads, they all talk about like a lot of science, right? Like, so is there anything that is particular to this non-ideal worship?
That is the exact reason, especially some of the mature schools which are focusing on the Nirakara Tattvam will say don't go for idols. It is not against idols because we went beyond that. Because when you worship idols, you stuck at the idol. You are not really looking at the
Hey friends, Arun here. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. Today we have a special guest, Praveen. He's always enthusiastic in learning spirituality and learning a lot of insights on various spiritual scientists. So let's learn more about what is the spirituality is all about and how it is connected to meditation and how we can learn, grow in spiritual process. Yeah. Hi, Praveen.
hey Aaron, how are you?
Oh, super. Thank you. Thank you so much for asking. Yeah, so we already met a lot of times, and in fact, we did a spiritual video once regarding meditation. So let's drive on a different way today. So, yeah, just tell us briefly about your background, your childhood, and stuff.
Yeah. So I'm always a curious child. If you look at it from a school perspective, I'm like a first bencher. So that is the curiosity is always there in me, and mostly the curiosity is ignited by my father. So my father professionally is a bank manager, but he's a spiritual seeker, a very determined spiritual seeker, and we born and probably brought up in an Arya Samaj family. So he practices all of the Arya Samaj principles very vigorously, and he used to teach us Vedas and Upanishads from the childhood. So all the greatest heroes that I never really heard from the school, but actually I heard from my father. So all of that heroes, Valerie stories, and the greatest scientists on how the Upanishads and Vedas describe all of that concepts. I've already learned all of them. So that's how my curiosity and the inclination towards the spirituality has actually started from there.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, just briefly explain like what is this Ari Samaj is all about, and what are the
Yeah.
basic core principles of it?
So Arya Samaj is basically right. It was started by Dayananda Saraswati during the time where completely the Hinduism is all about idol worship. That was the time where he started. He went back to the roots where he started looking at Vedas as the recognized text and started looking at the absolute core value of the universe in terms of Brahman, Paramatma Tattvam. So at any time in our home, we always talk Jivatma, Paramatma. These are the two catchwords. So if you to get all of that, so Arya Samaj always looks at the source being. In fact, Jivatma, Paramatma is a one way of talking, but the most prominent word being used is Chaitanya, which is nothing but consciousness. So always it talks about the Chaitanya Tattva and how individual can become can actually achieve towards the Paramatma Tattva Sthiti through the multiple ways. Doesn't necessarily become a Paramatma, but work towards that state. So that is the foundation. I would say principle. So in that sense, they spend more of time in terms of describing what God is not and what God is. God is basically Nirakara, Nirguna, energy, consciousness. So they're spending a lot of time because of the time, right? Because it was around 150 200 years ago where everyone completely forgot about Vedas. In fact, during the Britishers, they completely destroyed all the Vedas. So Dayananda Saraswati went back to, basically acquired or got the Vedas from UK, and he actually translated all the Vedas into Hindi and then in many languages. So most of the Vedas, Upanishads, Brahmanikas, he translated. What it basically means is that knowledge was lost. Doesn't mean that there a lot of people were there, But at that moment, knowledge was lost. So he spent more time in educating the people that don't stuck just to the idols and the gods, go beyond that. Okay, there is nothing wrong with idols, but he basically wanted to, his principle or Arya Samaja principles is go beyond, try to understand the real source of the universe or this creation. So
So
that
you
was
said you said
the
like
principle.
idols, right? Like
Right.
what exactly is this idol? Like most of the people, even uh, that's regular process in our daily life. If you are born in Hindu or in Christianity, anywhere,
Mm.
like there is always idol, and we are going to worship that, right? Like
Correct.
is that are we really growing? If we are doing the idol worship, like what is your way of looking at it? Like if you do the worship of idol.
See, idol worship is basically okay. Let me put this way, right? So let's say you are a kid, LKG kid, right? You start with going to the school. You just go to the LKG and maybe up to 10th class you go to the school, and after that you graduate and from the school and you go into the college, right? So the nature of school is all about, there is always a principal or a teacher who exactly teaches you what to study, how to study, and always test you, and it is much more uh, teacher teaches and you just learn, you just follow. So that is the kind of mindset. But when it goes to the college, college is more like so these are the reference materials or this is the guidelines, and you just read those and try to explore yourself, and mostly it is about how you understand those principles and you apply it and try to come up with it. That's why a lot of emphasis given to the practicals or the research and all of that. So if you understand this, the idol worship and non-idol worship is exactly falls under that. Though where the when you are absolutely, when in the beginning a spiritual seeker, you do not know anything about it, and it's extremely difficult to understand the nirguna tattva or even brahmatma, brahman, or chaitanya, right? So for them it is easier to connect with the nature, connect with idols, because idols are nothing but a manifestation of what actually you are thinking of creation. In fact, most of the Indian temples, scriptures, everything somehow connected to the sun god, and of course Navagrahas, and of course Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, right? The creators, all of these three. But when you look at this, why sun god is worshipped more, and in not necessarily just Indian culture, across entire world, it is a sun god because he is the most prominent, visible sign of life. I mean, everyone understood that without sun, you cannot really survive. So, initially, it starts with acknowledging that, yes, sun is the reason for us to live or thrive, and without sun, we cannot really live. So, you start respecting them. Then, once the respect grows, you start devoting. And once the devotion grows higher, that's how the idols comes in. So, is there anything wrong? No, there is nothing wrong. But if you stop at just the devotion, don't try to understand the reason, the nature of a sun, then your knowledge will not, you will not grow there. So that's how the idol worship is all about. So while idol worship is great for the beginner seekers to understand the nature of a creation, to learn to practice the gratitude, surrenderness, all of that, but to go beyond that, right? Beyond like a unify. I mean, you from a oneness to implement the oneness, you have to go beyond the idols, and that is where you will have to follow the nirakara. In fact, there is a term for sakara and nirakara. There are the two schools in the Upanishads or in the Vedas
Is
where
there
this.
anything that Vedas or Upanishads, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like they all talk about like a lot of science, right? Like, so is there anything that is particular to this non-ideal worship, or like, is there anything that signifies these things?
Yeah, in fact, that's a great example, great question. So, believe me, I was just watching a YouTube video where there is a topic about this idol worship, and one of the author beautifully explained about the Keno Upanishad. So, Keno Upanishad is all about, see, all Upanishads, in fact, if you look at it, it's all about a guru shishya or two people discussing, conversing. It's not like I teach you, you follow. It's all about exploration. So, if you look at it, the structure of any Upanishad, whether they talk about idol or non idol, is all about inquisitive. I give you this guidance, how do you explore it? right? That's a fundamental block. And then, specifically to your question, in the Kena Upanishad, they have actually very beautifully explained. Like the student asks them, what is the reason, or how, what is the reason for a creation, or who is the what is the fundamental principles, guiding principles behind that. And in fact, of course, in the Vedas, they call it as a Brahman. Brahman is the, again, another word for God,
Creation,
consciousness. Yeah,
God of
uh,
creation.
a lot of creation, right? So that's the word they use. So most of the Vedas are actually talks. I mean, again, I could probably quote a ton of examples, but the Kena Upanishad is one of the easiest or very specific examples talk about the Nirakara Tattva.
Yeah. So, since you said about not ideal worship or nothing, right? Like no worship of God. So even in PSSM, we have a principle that says that talks about this thing, right? Like you don't need to worship any idols in order to have your spiritual growth, right? Like, do you have any significance? Do you see any significance in it? Like, is that really is going to help our spirituality? And is there anything wrong if we do the idol worship? And like these days, like if any guru who's talking about really good things, right? Like we are going to worship like living or dead, right? Like that's what happening in most of the times. The next what do you call, like the next generation of kids, they start worshipping the previous generation of whoever it is, like be it Rama, Krishna. Like, are we really necessarily need to worship, or we just need to understand the spirituality that they have taught so far? So how do you see these things?
That's believe it or not, that's a beautiful question, and in fact, that's one of the very fundamental reasons for me to pull into PSSM world, because I'm always brought up in the abstract, and see, it actually really helps. So first of all, if you are purely looking at the Nirakara Tattva, right? So you're not really attached to the form, you are attached to the character that it will give you. So I'll just take a one simple example, right? So let's say you are a maybe 10-year-old and you want to learn cricket, right? And you ask your dad, Papa, who is the cricket god? Of course, you know it is Tendulkar. So do you think by putting a Tendulkar's statue and just worshipping daily will give you that learn, or by understanding how Tendulkar hits a cover drive or the square drive and practice it continuously will help you, right? Which one will help
Absolutely,
you?
absolutely. Like I don't worship cricket.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't worship Sachin to understand cricket.
yeah,
I'll just practice every day.
yeah. So that,
Every day I see his videos, understand like how he is doing when there is a bouncer, when
yeah,
there is a short ball. Like
yeah.
I'll try to understand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is exact reason. Especially some of the mature schools. Again, I wouldn't really maybe there is a better word. Maybe some of the schools which are focusing on the Nirakara Tattvam will say, don't encourage, don't go for idols. It is not against idols, because you're beyond. We went beyond that, because when you worship idols, you stuck at the idol. You're not really looking at the characteristics of what idol did. Instead, you stuck at the idol and you worshipping the idol. What we needed to know, for example, in the case of Tendulkar, how Tendulkar learned, how Tendulkar hits a cover drive. That is important. It doesn't. It's not important how Tendulkar looks like, or whether you worship Tendulkar or not. It doesn't matter. So similarly, in the Nirakara Tattva, when you transcend beyond the idols, you are actually not really stuck to any person. Instead, you are looking at the what kind of framework the person have used, what was the thought process, what was the principles that person adopted. You go after the principles, and that will help us in terms of connecting with a oneness or a Nirakara Tattva or a Brahman. So in my view, it is a gradual progression. It is, again, there is nothing wrong, both the schools are existing, but from idol worship to the Nirakara Tattva is a gradual progression in terms of connecting with a oneness or a Brahman.
Absolutely great. Like whatever you said, right? Like everything is echoing the spiritual growth. So yeah, in the context of like spiritual growth or idol worship, right? Like most of the people, they do a lot of sadhana in terms of doing bhajana or kirtana or like praying in God all the time. and there's a lot of things that we all do to, in order to have a spiritual growth, right? Like some people even say that if you don't do bhajan or worshipping the god, there is something bad is going to happen. There's a lot of things that stop us doing whatever we wanted to do, right? Like how do you actually it is that really going to help if I don't do any kind of sadhana in terms of kirtanas or ideal worship? Like how exactly it's going to help us in spiritual growth?
It's a beautiful question. In fact, I can actually take my life example. So I came from a Arya Samaj family where I never really worshipped a god. But my wife is born into a normal, typical Puranic family where she always worships God. So I take a Jnana dimension from a Vedas, and she takes a Bhakti dimension. So from a Bhakti dimension, right? First of all, the question is, you are not going to worship a god out of fear. That is never going to solve. Even in the idol worship also, with out of fear, you're only in the consciousness maps, you're at the bottom of the spectrum. If you worship a god even in the idol form through the unconditional love, that definitely gets you somewhere from a spiritual progress perspective, right? So there is, first of all, there is no one to punish you. So, and even if you want to worship god, it has to be come from love. Now the second is, with the bhakti idol worship, it helps you with the surrenderness, right, in the beginning. But after that point, since you stuck to that particular idol, you find it difficult to actually be a transcend beyond that. But whereas in terms of an abstract person like me, maybe I find it I take a little longer to build that kind of a surrenderness. But I don't have any obstacles, so I can probably progress much more faster. Now, when it comes to right, right? So, in my view, it is about inquisitive questioning, the inner experience, that is important. And when we have a lot of preconceived notions, they actually block us from the spiritual growth. So, but by not having that kind of idol blockers, you actually grow faster. That's my view.
Yeah, so even now, we all, whenever you consider doing meditation, right? Like
Hmm.
people used to say that you become as a spiritual scientist.
Right.
So when you are becoming a spiritual scientist, you always see everyone as a spiritual scientist.
Correct.
Everyone who's considered to be living here or dead, no, they are all doing say their own experiments, their own creation, and they are trying to find something out of it. So we learn from everyone. It's not that you only learn from particular category of people and you don't learn from these people. There's nothing as such.
That's true.
So that's how, like, we there is no religion, and there,
Correct.
if you are trying to put a put a boundary to your science, then it turns out to be a religion. If
Yeah.
you just remove all the boundaries,
Yes.
you just learn from everyone.
Yeah.
That's how the spiritual science
Correct.
forms.
Yeah, and in fact, in addition to what you asked the previous question, see, in the current life, I'm born in Hindu. Who knows what my past life was? Maybe a Muslim, maybe a Christian, maybe a Gnostic. I don't know. So I would basically experience life in every, I mean, in every costume, right? And I gradually progress. So maybe in my past lives, I must have already crossed all of that idol worship. So now it's a time where I crossed my those stages. Now it is a time to experiment, right? By learning, travel inner travel, and then experience Nirguna Tattva. So it is never a hindrance in any way, and you are not anyway starting from scratch. You are starting from all of your gnana, samskaras that you carried from all of your past lives. So you can always have to learn from everyone, and by not really blocking anyone, right? Learn from all the masters, all the religions, all the signs, and everywhere. In fact, I mean, I know I'm slightly digressing a point. So by trade, I'm a computer architect, software architect, but I read the biology books. I read quantum theories. I listen to the Carnatic music, and I'm learning Carnatic music. And I listen to all of the Jyotish Avataras, all of them, not fully, to some extent, because my wife follows many of them. And I try to see, I actually understand the science cuts across all these dimensions. But if I see that I'm a scientist, I should not listen to the Jyotisha or Avataras or anyone, then I'll be a fool, because I may be missing out the knowledge coming from all of that. So, not sticking to any one individual or one form will help me to learn and observe from everyone. And that is essentially is about not worshipping just an idol, because you're stuck at one level. Again, there is, I mean, idol worship at some level is great, no question about it. But we have reached beyond the stage where we have to understand the for guiding principles, and of course learn from everyone. So that will the by it actually we can actually be much more open when you don't really worship idol. Again, that's my opinion.
Awesome, awesome. Great insights on what is ideal worship and why do we need to do it and why do we do not need to do it. So there are many insights that you have given today. So we would like to learn more about you with another topic, for the next time. So that's it for now. Thank you so much for joining us today and spending time in the nature. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank
Let's
you,
meet
Arun,
again.
for giving me this such a beautiful time. In fact, you brought up the end of the discussion is also nature. So nature doesn't have any form, but and you put an idol again. You stop it there, right? So you connect with the nature and you connect with everyone. You learn from everyone, and that's how the life should be.
Yeah, thank you. So, one final message to our PMC USA and all the viewers here, right? So, just give us a message saying that, like, suggestion that you want to give. Um, how do you suggest to the people who are doing the ideal worship and doing the meditation at a time? And what is the suggestion that you want to give to the people who are not doing any kind of idol worship and doing meditation? Like, what are the suggestions that you want to give?
Yeah, I think whether you worship or not worship, right? So you always have to question uh, rather than what someone said it, right? Unless until you question yourself, you don't really go beyond it, because there's always a different meaning. In fact, that's a very again, I'll try to digress it a little bit. So today morning I was discussing with my wife, and I asked her like why everyone worship Ganapati as the first thing, right? So you could say Lord Shiva said so and so that everyone should worship Ganesh. That's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is again this is just my individual interpretation. Lord Ganesh represents root chakra. You start actually aligning yourself from a root chakra, and then individually move on to the Swadhisthana and other chakras and go on to the Sahasrara. So you start from there. So the same story, but I interpret it differently. So when you don't have that, I have to stuck to idol. You will not go into this level of inquisitive nature. Again, there could be multiple ways of interpreting the same concept. So that not sticking to the idol will help us in exploring the same content in a multiple different ways.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely great insights. Yeah, even I, as you're speaking, right, like I kind of got this idea. Like, there is already existing things everywhere. It's based on your mindset, you see things there.
Correct.
That's
Correct.
that's how I see it now. Thank you so much, and that's really great insights on how we need to look at spirituality and look at things, right? And thank you so much for all the answers and all the insights on meditation and much more spiritual, digger deeper into spirituality. And okay, friends, that's about it. And we have wonderful master today. We have learned a lot of stuff in spiritual science. So let's meet again for another episode with another great master, another great spiritual wisdom that we wanted to hear from. And that's about it for now. And if you like our content, please do watch, subscribe to our PMCSA, and do like, share, comment if you like it. Thank you so much.